by your one and only literary pharaoh. As you can see on my screen here, I am going to be reading an article and breaking it down. And it's not as current. Well, it's not dealing with current events, but it is dealing with current events in a way that we already know that the COVID-19 thing has already, you know, came and went. But it is important, if you consider yourself a critical thinker, to start to kind of put yourself in a state of reflection so we can learn from our mistakes. Because usually in real time, our emotions tends to get the best of us. We are put into a state where we are operating off of flight or fight, simply operating in our amygdala brain, reptilian brain. So we're very responsive and impulsive versus being strategic and responding off of logic. And I think certain things that happened during the COVID-19 era, 2019, 2020, and moving forward, I believe that people who were immersed in it, people were just taking over. It seemed like the majority of people had their brains hijacked, and nobody had the decency to have common sense. And when I say nobody, of course, I'm being hyperbolic here. There were certain people out there that had common sense, but it was very few in numbers. So let me start reading this article here. And remember, these are things that happen. So when you particularly make yourself go back retroactively and take a retrospective perspective on things that have already gone, things that have already happened and have gone and passed on. You should practice this in your everyday life. It just shouldn't be for current events. Just anything you do in life, always look back and see the things that you've done right and see the things that you've done wrong. And from that, you can learn from your mistakes and improve upon things that you didn't foresee at the time when you were in it. Sort of like a person in a bad relationship. When you're in a bad relationship, you oftentimes don't feel the negative effect. Is after you leave the relationship and your mind is cleared, you can start to kind of have a retroactive look about of the things that you went through while you were in that relationship. Then you start making conversations interpersonally, start telling yourself, what was I thinking? Why did I stay? Why did I do this? But while you're in it, you can't think clearly because your emotions are getting the best of you. So let's get into this article. This is Americans who disagreed with COVID-19 mandates labeled domestic violent terrorists by Biden regime. Like I said, this article is current, but it's not current because it's talking about the Biden regime. We all understand that Biden is not the president right now. We all know that Trump is the president. But if you were a person that disagreed with the COVID-19 mandates in terms of wearing masks, getting the mandatory vaccines, all the stuff that they were putting in place, if you were a person that was against that, they deemed you to be a violent terrorist. Can you believe that? And believe it or not, the people who were considered the domestic terrorists are actually standing on the right side of history because as time unveils, we understand that the whole thing was a damn hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. You don't have to believe me. Some of you guys are going to get offended by it because you guys take this COVID-19 thing as something that's religious. It's almost like a cult, almost. It's like you're almost demonized if you don't believe it. But yeah, so the Biden's regime considered people to be domestic terrorists. They love to use that word also, terrorists, to invoke fear and to make it seem like you are erring on the side of patriotism by standing for your country, going against your common civilians that don't think like you. It's a divide and conquer tactic. It's deeply psychological, if you ask me. It's a psychological operation. All right, reading along here. It says Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard confirms that the Biden administration put people on a domestic terrorist watch list who did not agree with COVID-19 lockdown mandates, vaccines, or who expressed fear for their children being vaccinated without their consent. This is clear evidence that the Biden administration and everyone around them was and continues to be at war with the people of the United States. People talk about it as a civil war coming and all this other stuff. I've been telling people the New World Order is already here. COVID-19 let us know that the whole world is a globe. The whole world doesn't operate off of distinctions or geographical lines, though those lines do exist. But overall, if the world wants to do something, they are connected. So the New World Order is a conglomerate web that's already infiltrates the world. The world is already operating as one. It's just now we're just waiting for the symptomatic impact of one form currency, one form government. We're waiting for the things to mature and flesh out to completely give us the indicated markers that New World Order is here and here to stay. But it's already here. The fact that COVID-19 can happen globally let me know that anything that the world wants to do, they can do it worldwide. They can make it happen. Reading along here, for nearly a decade, we've been living through a soft Marxist revolution that seeks to overthrow the United States Constitution form of government. It labels peaceful, law abiding Americans as domestic violent extremists. Another term for that is DVEs, using this label as justification to censor, blacklist, deplatform, debank, and imprison innocent Americans under the guise of national security. Don't they always love to do that, guys? They love to use this term, national security. National security. That's their main thing right there. It's for your safety, national security. We gotta protect. Reading along. This effort is being led by entities both within and outside the United States, both within the outside of the United States government by entities sympathetic to the neo-feudal goals of think tanks such as the Atlantic Council, including the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the EU, the UK, and China. Reading along here. After insurrection, countering domestic extremism in the United States military and law enforcement. Oh, that's the picture. They're just giving me the definition of the image up there. Okay, so reading along here. Although the Trump administration is slowly chipping away at this self-styled resistance, much of the United States federal bureaucracy remains staffed by globalists who are still trying to dismantle the United States Republic from within. Let me let you guys know something. I am not for Republican and I'm not for Democrats. I'm not for anything. The only people that I stand for is myself and my family. That's it. All these sections and all these classifications are done strategically. I want you guys to think and follow me here. These names that they're talking about, like Marxist and globalist and all these other stuff, these are names that are thrown out there to incite some sort of emotional response from people. It's to appeal to the emotional side of the human being. If we're being overly too emotional, then you can totally dismantle or compromise the effects of what being logical can incur, or what being logical can bring. You can't come to sound reasoning. You end up moving off of fear and operating off of that premise. And we all know operating off of fear is never good because we understand that fear is an emotional toxin. So with that being said, these things that are being said are written in a way where it makes you as the reader, you can make inferences. Basically, they're calling Biden the bad guy and Trump the good guy because Trump is going to come in and undo some of those things that Biden did. But I'm here to tell you to think above that. That it's not about good guy, bad guy. It's not about good cop, bad cop. It's not about left wing, right wing. Because if you're talking about left wing, right wing, both wings are part of the airplane. If you're talking about good cop, bad cop, both are cops. So I want you to get the idea. It's not the individual classifications that you should be choosing and picking to choose what side you want to be on with this tribal mentality that they're putting upon us. What I want you to do is think outside the box as an individual sovereign person and to tell yourself that these institutions that are put in place are the culprits to the issue. They're the culprits to the problem. Okay? It's a systematic issue. It's a systemic issue. It has nothing to do with which side you choose. Neither side has solutions to problems. What they do, they create problems and then they create a good cop, bad cop scenario to keep people's attentions divided and keep their attention into this political circus where none of us are actually aware of who the common enemy is. So I would just want to make that clear. I'm not here reading this as if Trump is the savior. Nobody's the savior. I've never believed in politics. Politics is a joke. the entire government is a joke. We don't even have a government. We have a treasonous government. I've done videos on that, but I'm not gonna get into that on this live. So reading along here, this is I'm up at the top. It says this is especially visible in the actions of several federal judges blocking the will of the American people who overwhelmingly support the mass deportation of millions of illegal immigrants, tens of thousands of whom are gang members convicted of murder, rape, etc., military-aged men who are viciously violent, unlike the so-called DVEs. So now they're trying to make a comparison with illegal immigrants and the people who were here. Again, it's a divide and conquer tactic. Okay, not everyone who's immigrating over here is a criminal. We have criminals that are already here. And all right, and I don't want to get in too deep into why I think criminals are criminals. Yeah, you do have people that are clinically and mentally insane, where it doesn't matter if they just like to do evil. But I believe for the most part, people who are committing crimes because they lack resources and they're doing the best that they can to get the resources that they need to have a comfortable living. And if they can't get a job, if they can't get certain things, they're going to sometimes want to take from people who do. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just giving you a reason as to why certain people do what they do. But it should never be that way. There's enough resources for everybody on the planet to live comfortably. But that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. Let me continue to read on. So now they're putting the animus or the distinctions or the comparisons between the DVEs, domestic violence. Oh, I forgot what the DVE stands for again. Let me go back up and make sure that I'm saying that right. Domestic violent extremists. So they consider the people who weren't going for those COVID mandates to be domestic violent extremists. So they're putting it's always about two sides, and that's the way all stories are ran. You have Republican, Democrat, you have liberal, conservative. Everything's in twos. It all constitutes underneath the law of duality. It's all emanating from that grander scheme. So everything kind of extrapolates from that. And you have these different tentacles of everything that are happening in duos, in twos, duos, forcing you to pick a side. Heaven, hell, devil, God, Jesus, Satan. You get it? Everything's happening in twos. So that same practice or that same theme and premise, it leaks into our everyday existence. And you see it here in this article. It can't even help itself that it has to put two sides against each other. But doing so, it disarms us from finding who our common enemy is. This is why Democratic politicians are manically protecting homicidal invaders. Here we go, talking about Democrats, which I don't give a damn. Like, it's all a game. Blocking their deportations, flying down to visit them in El Salvador, and sheltering them in their own homes because the Democratic Party has devolved into a uniformly treasonous entity. Well, our government is treasonous. The Republicans have a part to play in it as well. The Republicans are not the good guys. Everyone is an accomplice in this. The government is the accomplice, but they have to give off the false perception that there's a certain sector of the government that's trying to do good, and there's a certain sector that are doing evil. Both are evil, and both are just playing the good cop, bad cop, or playing the good lens and bad lens to manipulate us as the consumers of this information. But people who are pushing to be critical thinkers like myself, we can see beneath the surface. We can see beyond the surface. We can see a little bit deeper than what they're giving us. Reading along here. Because the Democratic Party has devolved into a uniformly treasonous entity, they are standing up these violent gang leaders to serve as the flag officers in their war against the United States. The DNC, Democratic National Convention, is impersonating a legitimate political party that represents the interest of United States citizens, but they are a clearly a hostile entity. Due to the capture of the media and the major universities, etc., many self-identifying Democrats fail to see this fact. 107 who has said repeatedly that the main agency responsible for the long-term overthrow of the United States that has been ongoing for decades, if not centuries, is the Senior Executive Services, SES, which is controlled by British intelligence. Now, this portion here about the American government being taken over, that's probably the only marker of truth in this article as I can see. This doesn't have any any ulterior motive, if I can say that. I've always said this, and I think that the overthrow of the government is going on longer than decades. We've never really had an American government. If you go back and look at the history of how the government was even comprised or how it came to be, it's a treasonous government. It's always looked out for foreigners. And they're just playing this diabolical game where they're making you feel underneath the Stockholm syndrome impact or Stockholm syndrome effect, where you feel emboldened to your country. You feel like you are the citizen and you're trying to protect these borders from these immigrants. But in actuality, the government doesn't give a damn about immigrants coming in or out. They've never cared. As a matter of fact, most of the policies that are here are for immigrants. They're for the struggling. They're for those that are study or overseas or from overseas or coming here to go to school to feed into the assimilative themes of what the higher education systems want. They want you to get into certain jobs. They want you to hold certain occupations. They want you to think a certain way. So it's easier to mold those that are coming over here new, because if you don't assimilate or fall in line into the practices that the United States wants you to fall in line with, they can always kick you out or deport you. Whereas if you are a citizen, they have to deal with you. So it's much better to deal with the devil you don't know than the devil you do know, because the devil that they do know are the American citizens. You can't deport us. You have to deal with us. So it's better to let immigrants come in. You can manipulate their minds. You can indoctrinate those people. You can brainwash those people to concede or to amalgamate to any movement that you're trying to put forth. So it's easy because they're desperate. They're coming over here for something. So you can say, do this. If you join this program, if you take these courses, if you do this, you can kind of control those people that are coming from abroad, because they are in need. They need a handout. So you can put them in certain programs and put them into certain things that can feed into the agenda that you're trying to create. But if those people don't fall in line, you can always deport their ass back to their countries. Where in Americas, you can't do that. So anyway, going back here, I'm at the top here. Juan O. Savin has said repeatedly that the main agency responsible for the long-term overthrow of the United States has been ongoing for decades, if not centuries, is the Senior Executive Service (SES), which is controlled by British intelligence, which is in turn is controlled by the top committee members of the elites who control the central banking systems. Now they're starting to make sense. See, this is what I call alternate media, alternate news. Now, it doesn't mean that everything that's being said here is factual, but you're more likely to get to the truth here than you would listening to people on CNN or listening to people on Fox News or MSNBC. Those stations are bought and paid for by the controllers. They're going to give you surface type information. Every once in a while, they may give you a little bit of, they may give you a bit of a nugget to kind of hang your hat on, give you something to kind of chase, so you can go down a kind of shallow rabbit hole. But there's no end in sight, and you really don't even get anything that's actually worth finding or worth knowing. Where in actuality, articles like this tends to kind of connect the dots and let you know who's in control. When you start talking about banking systems, that's when you're starting to get to the truth, because it's all about the money. Whoever controls the money controls the world. Whoever controls the money controls the politicians. Whoever controls the money controls governments, because everything's ran and based off of money. The banking systems. Reading along here, this is why, despite the resounding electoral victory of President Trump, and despite the fact that the Democratic Party has an unfavorable rating of about 60% among all U.S. registered voters. I always wonder where they get these damn numbers for, because I'm a registered voter. I just don't vote. Well, I once believed in this system years ago, but I'm much older and wiser to even put my soul into that nonsense. But who are they polling to know that the Democratic Party, the party has an unfavorable rating of 60%? Sometimes I think they just make up these damn numbers. There's no verification to see how can we substantiate that particular number of 60%. I don't believe that. Okay, reading along here. The Democratic Party has an unfavorable rating of about 60% among all U.S. registered voters. The resistance continues to disregard the will of the people, with a former FBI director last week openly calling for president's assassination. This is a long-term, low-intensity war against the U.S. that is part of a global war being waged by the same group of elites against the people of dozens of countries throughout the world. So yeah, I'm going to end the article there. So I mean, the little shooting that happened, the failed attempt at assassination, was also a hoax on Trump. But This is where I really believe that mainstream media, or what they call legacy media, is steeped in the practices of witchcraft, because it plays on the minds of the people. Because what they do, they use a mixture of some truths, and they use lies and truths and precedents. Precedents are events that are created to be magnified by social media to drive and slant narratives. So everyone saw the quote unquote failed assassination attempt on Trump. People actually believed that he was trying to be, he was, people were trying to kill him, but it was all a hoax. The reaction, everything was fake. It's fake as fuck. I don't give a damn what you say. If you believe that, then you believe what you want to believe. It was all fake. But they do these things, so these things will be written in history books, and they'll be written down as if they were truths. That's what they've done throughout history. They've concocted stories and made up stories, stories about Harriet Tubman, stories about Frederick Douglass, stories about slavery, stories about presidents. They're stories. They're not true. That's why they're called stories. They're telling you stories. Don't believe mainstream media because the information is controlled. Don't believe even the alternative news stuff that I'm reading right now. You can't believe everything, but what it does do is at least it gives you information, it gives you things to think about, and it gives you multiple perspectives that you can consider versus just what the mainstream media wants you to consider. So in actuality, I'm trying to implore people how to think versus telling them what to think. And you don't have to agree with everything that I say. My objective is not to read things to you so you can agree with me. But what you do have to agree with is that the majority of the news information that we're getting is not factual at all. It's not. Leave a comment, tell me what you guys think. Peace.